Welcome to Camp Maddie. Learn from the pros dog foster recruitment strategies that are working right now. Maddie's Fund does a national foster survey every 2 years to get insight into how foster programs are used and supported. This session's panelists are from organizations that not only responded to the survey, the most recent survey, but they're in the top 5% for placing big dogs in foster. We'll be asking them about their most successful strategies for dog foster recruitment. So our panelists, Meaghan Colville, founder and director of shelter operations at Cincinnati Animal Care Humane Society. Whitney Fang, founding executive director of Hearts and Bones Rescue. And Jennifer Taylor, director of Renegade Paws Rescue. Welcome, panelists. We will start with 3 questions. For each question, I'll call on one of you to start us off, and then the others can chime in afterward. After these 3 questions, we'll take as many as we can from the audience. Start with Whitney. What are the most effective strategies you're using to recruit foster caregivers now?
Well, I'm sure you guys have discussed a lot of these today. And from what I'm hearing, there's kind of the standard methods and what I describe as grassroots methods. Both are equally effective, but they target completely different audiences. So I would encourage, if you guys aren't already doing them, to do both methods. Let's go through the standard methods first, since that seems to be kind of the obvious thing, right? Most people use volunteer match. Most people use social media, right? Working with your local shelter. Maybe there's a volunteer there at the shelter that you can convert, right? Yes, those are still very effective strategies. That being said, the grassroots methods really have taken our ability to expand our fostering program a lot more. And let me go through some of those strategies that have really worked really well for us. The first is networking via places that have animals. So like doggy daycares, right? Vet clinics, right? In places that house dogs. Because guess what? You already know what your baseline is, right? You know that people love dogs there, or people love cats there, right? And so, people with pets, so say they're bringing their dog to the vet clinic, right? And you have a flyer there that or like you talk to the receptionist in advance, be like, hey, we're XYZ Rescue, right? And this is what we're trying to do. Then oftentimes they can, through word of mouth and, many flyers that we have posted everywhere, recruit vet techs, recruit vet assistants, recruit other people with pets, right? And that word of mouth piece, actually, we've found oftentimes is even stronger than just a general social media call, because guess what? All of us are on social media. All of us are flooding the waves, and people who love dogs probably see this all the time, right? So how do you stand out? It's networking within your own community, and places that house dogs, places that work with dogs are going to be a great grassroots place to get started. The other piece of it with grassroots is also just having your existing fosters and volunteers network within their own networks, right? So this is, of course, more of a pre-COVID strategy, but, people talk about like water cooler talk, or like when they're at work, send out those flyers, have them print that, right? And then post that in their cafeteria at work, right? If you're at a large corporate company, right, if there's a bunch of people that gather in one place, oftentimes they'll probably know you as, oh, that's the dog lady, right? That's the cat person. And post that flyer up in there, and they'll oftentimes come find you, right? My daughter loves dogs, and they'll talk about their dog. It's like, well, guess what? There's opportunities to foster, and that human connection through these grassroots methods oftentimes have been much more successful for us in recruiting fosters than just social media blasts. And don't get me wrong, those work too, and we do those as well. But grassroots methods in particular have been ultra successful for us. So the other piece that I would mention in terms of effective strategies to recruit foster caregivers, in terms of the advice I give, there's just kind of the 3 T's, so to speak. It's timeline, training, and transform, which is a little bit of the grassroots that I've talked about. But that's an easy way for me to remember, at least. It's creating a really positive experience for your current foster so that they will continue to spread the word about fostering, right? Timeline is that one critical piece, right? Do you want indefinite fosters until adoption? Are you fostering for transport? How about just 2 weeks to start, right? Just being extremely clear with what the timeline is so clear, so important in terms of creating a good experience so that your fosters will advocate for you when they're also, recruiting down the line. Training, of course, is the second piece of it, right? one-on-one training with new fosters, offering that up front in your flyer, right? Every new foster gets training with a one-on-one training, a group training, or whatever it is. Just be clear about what you're offering in your flyers, in your word of mouth conversations. Do a little elevator pitch that, you know, you can copy and paste in an email and tell fosters to go through, you know, when they're having these conversations. And then the third T, of course, is to transform, right? That's the conversion of people in your community, donors, volunteers, you know, coworkers, things of that nature, to fostering, and really encouraging temp foster signups. And what I mean by that's the transform piece, right? People are like, I can only foster for 4 days, right? And maybe that's fine, especially during Christmas, right? We all have these needs during Christmas when everyone is going on vacation, right? But oftentimes, again, if they have a good experience, going back to the first two T's, right, then you can transform them into standard fostering. And we've also seen that as a really, really big success. When you're like, oh, wow, it wasn't that bad this time, right? Give them that easier dog the first time, you know, give them a good experience and they'll come back. And sometimes these guys become behavior fosters over time. So the three T's is really key to, you know, our the development of our foster program, and with a big asterisk and highlight on the grassroots piece of it. So so that's what's been really helpful for us in terms of recruiting foster caregivers. So
Meaghan or Jennifer, you want to weigh in?
I agree completely with the transforming of people in the community. So we are a very large university city. We have SCAD here. It's Savannah College of Art and Design. And those kids are only here, like their semesters are weird. So we get them to take puppies and it kind of transforms them into a bigger recruitment, because a bigger recruitment sort of advocate for us, because they just take this little bit of time. We start them as advocates for our dogs in our shelter. They take them for walks, they take them for weekends, and then we grow them from there. And they're out there telling people what we're doing and how great it is. So I agree completely with that. It's just, we use them and also our military bases because they are always transitioning and leaving. So we use a lot of our military bases for temporary fostering. And then they tell all their friends, and they're always out at a bar somewhere. So they're always telling people about us and how much fun they had.
Yeah, I think for us, we here in Cincinnati, the biggest thing that we've done with recruitment is that fostering is everywhere for us, whether we're putting something on social media, we're on the news, we're sending an email out, we're sending out, fundraising information. Pretty much anything that we are doing or saying or writing or mailing or sending has foster in it. That was a big transition for us at the probably about a year in. We're pretty new. We're about 3 years old in Cincinnati, and fostering was relatively new to our community. But just getting it in front of as many people as possible has been important. And then also just staying flexible. Fostering can kind of sound scary. It might, for us, we're all like, well, everyone on here obviously understands what fostering is, but not everybody does. And so just being flexible and meeting people with whatever they can provide, whether it's a short-term foster. Our team has stayed late because somebody couldn't pick up during our hours. We'll kind of bend over backwards to make sure that if somebody's willing to put the time and work in, we're willing to help them. And then one other cool thing, just with like direct mail, which I know some people kind of get away from or think it's a little pricey. We were able to do a heat map and figure out kind of what parts of our community were not as engaged with fostering. And if you go to the USPS website, they will mail stuff for you, and they'll do it for just pennies. So it's a lot cheaper than buying a bunch of stamps and sending.
Awesome. Thank you. Meaghan, what are the ways that you're sending pleas to your current foster base to ask them to foster a pet, and what is working best?
Well, we have a really strong Facebook page. I know not everybody does, but we've got about 3,000 people on our foster Facebook page. People have asked how we did that. I can actually say I don't know. It caught some energy and some momentum early on. And so it's very active. And so getting posts up on the Facebook page for some organizations wouldn't work, but because ours is so active, it does work pretty well. One thing that we started doing this fall, I think like a lot of shelters were experiencing a kind of a decrease in foster engagement. I know a lot of people are experiencing a decrease in adoptions. With our fosters, we started making individual phone calls and reaching out to individuals. That relationship building is just huge. I think it was mentioned by Whitney earlier, just getting in front of people and having those conversations are really important. It's easy to kind of breeze by a Facebook post or breeze by a, not open an email. But when you're actually calling and really in some ways singling people out in a good way, telling them that you did such a great job with that last litter of kittens. We would really love for you to come in and help with this litter as well. People feel good about that. And a couple other things we've been doing is getting some on-deck teams ready to go. So we're trying to turn our focus more to specialized fostering rather than just general fostering, so we can go directly to the people that we know that we need. And another thing that we do is we have a life-saving update that goes out each week, and that is our list of our most urgent dogs. A lot of them are bigger dogs. And so a lot of our fosters are signed up for that update, and they can see immediately who's most in need, who's the most urgent to get out of the building, either for a short-term foster, obviously long-term is great. But, just again, building those relationships is probably the biggest way to get pleas answered, with your foster base.
A little bit more controversial in our community is when we bought a building, we bought it in a neighborhood that hasn't been known to foster and hasn't been known to know a lot about animal welfare. So we've been in our community talking to these people that live where we are. And so we have gained fosters from those community members that weren't often involved or invited to be involved in animal welfare. And we've had a lot of success with that, especially with our unicorn dogs, because a lot of these folks don't have dogs. So with our support, they're able to become fosters and get involved in animal welfare on a different level than what has previously been allowed by the rescues in the South. So it's a very straight demographic here in the South. When you look at rescue, it is white women between 40 and 60 or somewhere in that age range. And we have been making sure to include the people in our community, teaching them about animal welfare, and also allowing them to join us, inviting them to join us and learn more and foster with us. So, for example, we have a neighbor, he came over yesterday and he wanted to foster a dog, and we signed him up. But there's a lot of, I get a lot of heat for that, but I think we're doing a really good job getting life-saving for dogs and also involving someone who is going to go tell his friend, hey, I got to have a dog for, a few months for free. They paid for everything. I didn't have to pay for anything. And that's kind of a big, hook for them, for this community to get involved in the animal welfare.
Awesome. And that leads to the question that I was going to have you start with. What strategies are you using to support and retain fosters?
So right now we have 325 fosters currently fostering right now. And what we try to do is make sure that they have what we call a case manager. So they don't have to come to me as the director or to the person that called them. They have case manager, lives in their neighborhood, and is able to kind of help deliver supplies or stop by and I'm having trouble potty training. Well, somebody that's a little bit more experienced comes by and gives you some tips. We also have just started, we're seeing a lot of older puppies not getting adopted. So back before COVID or during COVID, puppies were flying out the door, flying out by the time they had 3 shots, they were out the door. What we're seeing now is these litters of puppies that are growing up in care. So we have a protocol with puppy fosters. You take them, and once they have their 4 shots, they come either back to our shelter or into another foster. So it gives that family the support of not having to worry about the sibling syndrome that we see, or having these dogs until they're dogs. And we didn't see it coming until we had a litter of puppies that was a year old and still in care. We're like, whoa. So we've been doing that a lot of, it helps actually recruit fosters because they know it's only an indefinite period of time. We also have a trainer who does training office hours. So she comes to our office and the fosters can make an appointment and they can sit with her and go over training things. They can bring the dog. They don't have to bring the dog. They can also patch in on a video. So we are live most of the time, and they can patch in and hear what our trainer is saying. Because I think we have the same problems across the board. We also do things like, first person to come get a puppy gets a t-shirt. So we give away a lot of merch that way, but that really works. People love the t-shirt. So, first person that shows up, and then we'll have 5 people and I'll end up giving out 5 t-shirts. But we have that, as well as just support. Like, our support goes 100%. We have group messages on Facebook, which has turned out to be our best support. Is when you come pick up a dog, you go in a group message with the medical person, the foster coordinator, and senior foster, and they're all in this group Facebook message together, and you can check in whenever you want, and it offers advice and just a smaller support system than the big Facebook group, so you don't feel like you're ousted at every turn for every little thing you do wrong. And then we were a foster-based organization for 3.5 years, and we bought a building. So with the shelter situation, we are able to have more shorter term fosters. And I think that's really tough when you just have a foster-based organization, because we don't know the dogs. They're coming from, county shelters. So when we were just a foster-based organization, it was a lot tougher to have that kind of maintenance of fosters, because they can bring them back here. We have somewhere to put them. But, when you're just a foster-based organization, it's a struggle. We did it with, 300 dogs in care at a time, but just having that place to go just was a game changer for us. And if you don't have it, we had kind of an on-deck situation when we had a foster program only, and we had some fosters that we never filled. So like, they were kind of always sitting and open, and they could take a dog for 2 weeks, 3 weeks until we could figure something out. So these were people like our military people and our SCAD students that have to leave, and we know that they can't be long-term fosters. We wouldn't give them a foster when they would sign up. We would just put them on deck. And then when that person couldn't keep their foster, we were able to have somewhere for that foster to go rather quickly, which helped our foster. It helps when someone goes down the community, like, yeah, I fostered, it didn't work out, but they took the dog right back. So that has kind of always been a big thing when you're a foster-based organization, is where do they go when it doesn't work out?
You and Meaghan have both mentioned OnDeck systems. Can you tell me a little more about what they are and how you use them?
We have 2 OnDeck systems. We have one for kittens. We don't have a cat program per se. We have a TNVR program. So we just TNVR in our community, but a lot of times our TNVR team finds kittens. So whenever the TNVR team is going out, they have 4 fosters that are just in the wings, and we alert them in a group message and say, hey, Shayla's trapping, please be prepared and ready. And then we have these little pink packs that this lady made, that she lives in a nursing home and had nothing to do. She made these pretty pink packs, and they have dewormer, they have Dawn dish soap, and all kinds of supplies for kittens. And those are on deck packs. So when we tell these people they're on deck, they're just waiting for that call to say, hey, there are 4 kittens that need to come to you. And as far as the foster program with the big dogs, we had like a group orientation. That's how we started it with the SCAD kids, the college kids, and we told them what we wanted. They were thrilled. So we just kind of had them, we had like a list, and we would just go down that list when we needed them. And someone would, most of the time, would say, yes, hey, we'll take it. And they just kind of sat on that list. And if they really wanted to volunteer, some of them would do like events, but for the most part, they were happy to stay on the list and get their dogs when they got them and be able to go home to their parents every 6 weeks.
Yeah, we're a municipal shelter in Cincinnati, and that on deck thing, just like Jennifer, it's critical for us. We have animal control that works out of our building, so at any given time, they're bringing animals in, and our most vulnerable populations, the puppies, the kittens, the seniors, animals like that, really, we don't want them in the building at all. So if we can have somebody, if we know they're coming in, and we've got a list that we can, reach out to, that we know are ready to take puppies or kittens or seniors or whatever they sign up for, we can hopefully have that foster there same day, and just really take the animal off the animal control truck. And even with our stray and owner surrenders, we don't have a ton of owner surrenders right now through our diversion programs, but with our stray drop-offs, same thing. If somebody's calling and saying they've got a litter of puppies, we might tell them, can you come in at like 5? Because 5 o'clock, we will have a foster ready. So we try to coordinate that way, and having the OnDeck is just a list of people that can be, you can call in a pinch and they're ready to go. So that's been very helpful for us. I can talk a little bit about the retention, Kelly, if you'd like to. For us, it's about culture and support. I mentioned it earlier. Foster is it's a word that's used all the time around here. This really makes our fosters, I think, feel important. It makes them feel special. They're doing something great, and they are. But really building an organization that really values the foster families that come through our doors is huge. We've even, I think something as simple as foster shirts. We last year put out a shirt that says "Fostering saves lives." It was super simple, but I think a lot of our fosters got that shirt, and they really seem to identify with being a foster. That's part of their animal welfare identity, and possibly part of their identity in general. We've got people who have fostered like 30 dogs for us in the last 3 years. So it's pretty incredible. But I think the support is the area that we've improved the most in. We can talk about fostering all day long, but if people come in to foster and they feel like they were just left out to dry, they're most likely not going to come back. And so right away, when people sign up, they're getting immediate contact from us. We utilize text a lot. That was something relatively new to us. We were kind of sending emails and things like that, but people seem to respond really well to text because it's 2023. So that's something that was helpful, and it just pops right up on their phone. They're immediately being contacted. We have a welcome video that people see when they sign up. So they actually see somebody walking into the building, walking up to the front desk. They get to see what the process is going to be like. So we try to make it as less scary as possible. So right off the bat, we're trying to work on that retention and making sure people are having a great experience. Probably like both Whitney and Jennifer, we have a lot of check-ins, with our fosters. We reach out to them, a few days right after they begin fostering, and then we try to get to them weekly as long as they have that animal. One thing that was really interesting for us this fall was we did a survey, and 53% of our fosters had no interest in going to events and had no interest in marketing their foster animal. They just want to foster. The animal is can stay in their home forever. But they don't have any interest in like actively trying to get it out. So that was interesting information for us. We're a mid-sized shelter, about 8,000 animals come in a year. And we got a population of about 850,000 people here in Cincinnati. So if 53% of our fosters feel that way, probably you might have the same thing in your foster base. So Jennifer had mentioned, I can't remember what you called it, Jennifer, but we have foster coaches, case managers, what you said. We've got foster coaches. That's something that's actually pretty new. We've been trying to launch it for a while, but basically we can kind of connect those dots. If somebody doesn't want to go to events, we can have somebody that will take them to events. If somebody doesn't want to market, we'll have somebody else who puts together the whole marketing plan and gets that animal posted. And if anybody's having trouble, they can reach out to their foster coach. So it's that culture, making foster a big part of your organization and making it a priority, as well as, again, that support you're providing is going to help you retain fosters.
Awesome. All right. Audience questions. Mackenzie is asking, what kind of training do you give to your fosters before they take a dog home and while in the home?
We don't. Not a ton. And I think that's, on one hand, it's really good for removing the barriers. If we, start requiring a whole bunch of hoops to jump through when it comes to training, we could definitely turn some people off or, miss out on potentially a really good foster home. But we also recognize that training is important for the success of the foster. So it really sort of depends on the animal. We've got some of our big dogs, especially that have any kind of behavior issue. They have to meet with our behavior team before they leave. So they get a little rundown of, what to expect, what we think they could expect, and they're able to reach out. So we don't do a ton of training ahead of time, although that's something that we're kind of looking into. And next year's panel, we can get back to you on that. But right now, not a ton, but it's more for us about the support once the animal's in there.
For us as a foster-based rescue with no facility, in terms of training, it's a little bit more difficult because we don't have a central location. But there's two things that we have done and are currently doing that have been helpful for the training front, because a lot of it is fear. Like, I'm taking a dog for the first time and it's a high energy Australian Shepherd. What do I do? Right. We have regular standing trainings that are group trainings and anyone can come to it. Right. So it's just, if you're a foster who hasn't fostered yet, but you want to just learn a little bit before taking a dog, that's fine. If you have a dog already, but you're having trouble with something related to that dog, you can also bring your dog to the training, right? Or even if you've already adopted and you want to go to training for free, right? It's available, right? You just have to sign up. The second thing, which is more a proactive approach. So both are available, but the second way is a more proactive approach where we know a dog, let's talk back to this Australian Shepherd, that hypothetical Australian Shepherd that's coming up on transport or whatever it is. We know it's a high energy dog, right? And we know it's a first time foster. So we can proactively look, this could be a problem, right? Because they're new, they don't know anything about training. We will set them up with one of our training partners, which we have built relationships with over time. And for reference, we're based in Dallas and New York City. So in New York City, right, like people don't get around very easily, but we have trainers that we work with that are able to travel within certain boroughs to meet that foster. And so once we know the date that the dog is coming to the home, right, within 3 days, right, we'll have a session already set up because we already knew that ahead of time and we planned for it ahead of time, versus it being the reverse where the foster is spiraling and dog's not housebroken. Then you have your, kind of, I need to get this dog out by 5 p.m. situation, right? So the proactivity on the one-on-one training and developing those one-on-one training partnerships really helps with keeping the foster and the dog together, as well as retaining fosters long-term.
We have also started a relationship with some of our doggy daycares here. So there are a couple that we don't have to pay, but some of them we give them a little bit of money for the foster to be able to take their dog to doggy daycare. And that has been really, really helpful for some of our higher energy. Well, we don't see a lot of Australian Shepherds from the South, but our hounds, they they do really, really well at doggy daycare. And we found that some of our people that take these higher energy hounds or these used to be hunting hounds do really well with doggy daycare. So if you have doggy daycares in your area and you can hook up with them, even if you have to take a little money out of your budget to pay them, it's often very, very worth it.
Hey, one last thing on that. There's also training the foster and making sure that they're going to be successful too, not just the animal. And that's been something that's been really important, and we've really evolved as we've gone as well. Just making sure we're setting expectations for everybody, because with so many animals in foster at any given time, several hundred. I'm sure some of you have way more than that. Obviously your staff or your volunteers that are running the foster team can get really overwhelmed. So being able to really identify the main issues that people are having and then proactively address those, and create better streamlined lines of communication, things like that are going to be helpful. But that onboarding piece is really important as well, to just ensure that you get everybody on the same page and avoid problems up ahead.
Meaghan is asking, our shelter is in a really rural area. How would you go about finding new fosters here in an area that's rural?
We are somewhat rural too. We're Savannah. It's a little bigger, but most of our outlying areas are rural. So we actually have gone to the community meetings, and how everyone has their little community meetings. Some of our volunteers will go there and start talking about the animal crisis in the South, and then kind of talk about fostering. So we're just putting it out there in the high schools. We go see the kids sometimes, and parents hate us, but we'll start talking about fostering, and we get a lot of new fosters that way, because the kids will just beg and beg and beg and beg. And, they'll pop up in our inbox and say, my kids are begging me to foster. So we do that a lot. And I think that's always a really good way, especially without the shelter. We've been not as good about it since we've had the building, but just building that network, even just babysitters. Like that was a big thing. That's how we kind of started in our more like Guyton and Bryan County that are more rural. We just started asking for babysitters. We would go to the high schools. We would go to the community meetings with the county commissioners and all of that. And then literally we just would go to bars and have events at places that weren't PetSmart. So like you're touching on a new community. So like, the Gator Bar in Bryan County, everybody goes there. So we just kind of set up an event with them. It was a little, different, but we had a good time, and we recruited some really good fosters and volunteers from that. So we do a lot of going to places that normally you wouldn't be, because you have to get in front of people that aren't on your Facebook.
If I was in Cincinnati, I was at a rural shelter, kind of. It was about a half hour outside of Cincinnati, but really, I mean, a lot of the same strategies. You probably have a bit of a smaller pool to pull from, with just like a lower population of people, but there's still most likely I would imagine the same percentage of people are still going to be interested in fostering. So I agree with Jennifer, getting in front of people, getting, as I said earlier, making it a part of the culture, mentioning fostering everywhere you possibly can. I think a lot of those strategies will also work in a rural area.
Next question is, what other places do you recommend going to attract more foster caregivers?
I got to give one shout out. It's been brought up multiple times. The college campuses. I know I saw in the chat that some people are a little hesitant. College students are awesome. We use them all the time. They're pretty predictable. The one downside is in the summer, we know that our foster numbers are going to dip just a little bit. So we're trying to come up with some contingency plans there. But I know this has already been brought up, but I did want to mention that the college students are fantastic, and they're not going to, most likely they're not going to become foster fails either, because their parents won't let them. They are leaving after the semester, so they're really good for that. Working for dogs, or working with short-term fostering, and they also seem to have a really big open mind about fostering as well.
For the short-term fosters, like a week or less, how do you handle large dogs or any dog who are experiencing stress with the back and forth?
I can take that one. So yes, that of course can be a concern. So the way that I would look at it is I would actually, of course, organize the dogs that are not a good fit for the short-term fostering program, of course, right? But the way I actually think about it is in a little bit of a different light, where it's your way of increasing the overall number of dogs or cats that go into foster, right? Rather than, oh, now this one individual dog, like you're increasing your capacity rather than, just keeping at your existing capacity, if that makes sense. So even if it's one dog out of the shelter, but being bounced around, that's still technically better than that dog being in the shelter, right? And so the way that I would look at it is you would do, say, for example, a 2-week fostering commitment, right? That dog is going to be there for 2 weeks. And then at about 10 days, you'll check in with the foster and say, hey, how's it going? Oftentimes they will say, I'm just doing 2 weeks because I'm just dipping my toe into this, right? Have that conversation with them. How's it going? Do you have a hard deadline? Would you be willing to take him for another week, right? And then oftentimes it's I'll try it, right? Or maybe they have a flight because they're going on vacation, right? And then that's not okay. But this is their way of potentially, converting them, right? But in terms of general bouncing around, again, the way that I would view it is generally it's increasing your overall capacity, and it's still much better than the alternative, which is that they would be in a municipal shelter. So
we haven't seen a big difference if they come back and they're stressed, they were probably stressed beforehand too. So we haven't seen a real increase in, they go to foster, come back and they're worse. But I agree with Whitney that if the option is stay in the shelter or get a break, I'd rather give them a break, because the alternative would be they're going to be there anyway. So I haven't noticed that to be a problem.
Yeah, the research actually shows that when a dog goes on an overnight, their stress level in the shelter is at a certain place. When they go to foster, it goes down. And when they come back to the shelter, it goes back up to where it was before, but not higher. So the researchers theorized that that the overnight actually helps them to kind of relieve stress. It doesn't take it away entirely. Similarly to our weekends for the work weeks. There are links to that we will get you, because it's very interesting. I'd also, is it possible that the dog is having stress in the shelter, like that it's the shelter and not necessarily the going to a house? It's possible.
Well, and I think as well, we get a lot of reports because we do day trips at our shelter as well. People just take them out for the day. A lot of dogs just go home and crash, and they just get a really good night's sleep. And we've actually recruited fostering for that in some ways, where we're actually kind of just looking for, might be even a highly adoptable dog, highly adoptable, that we feel is just getting stressed. It hasn't slept in 3 weeks, or, it hasn't slept since it arrived. Giving it that opportunity to just go catch up on some sleep. You're going to see a different dog when they come back, most likely. So it can be very beneficial just to give them that short break. It is at least worth a try. But I know if I don't get enough sleep, I can't imagine what some of these dogs go through in these shelters where it's just barking and loud all the time. Even if you bring them into your office, they're probably just going to sleep. So I think that rest and that break from noise and break from the world that they're not used to is really important for them.
One for Jennifer. Can you give more details about your military foster program? There's someone who would like to start that as well.
So that was actually an accident. Some guy was kind of getting ready to deploy, and his kid was like, I don't know, we met him at like a PetSmart. I bumped into him in the parking lot and he saw my shirt. And I was like, you know what? Go ahead. You can come and take a dog for 2 weeks to be a babysitter. This was before we had the shelter. And he turned out to be one of our biggest advocates. So he then started telling all of his friends on base. But it's not hard. So like we have we're in Georgia, like right below South Carolina, and we have military bases both here and there. So we have a group, one of our fosters in South Carolina shared a post to the military spouses group. And so that's kind of where that started. When she shared that, the military spouses started asking, and then there were these like 47 comments on that post, and they were saying, nobody will let us foster, nobody will let us have dogs because we're military. And I was like, you can foster whoever you want. Come on down, like join us. So it was kind of an accident, and it turned into a larger foster base of military husbands and wives, especially when the husband is deployed. You can see that a lot of them will, husband's out of town, I'm going to foster a dog. And it's not long term, so they don't have to worry about when he gets home or whatever it is that happens in the family unit. They have a good time, they get all their supplies, they don't have to pay for anything, and they have a whole South Carolina group chat. They have their little and they just kind of manage each other, and we're able to send food to like their PetSmart, so they don't have to come all the way to Savannah. So like little things like that have kept them engaged. But you just have to understand that a lot of times the biggest downfall was when some of them wanted to adopt the dog and were ready to be deployed, or in some kind of where we had to be a little more conscious of letting them take the dog. Or we have a lot of breed restrictions on our military bases. I don't know if that's nationwide, but in the South, you can't have Rottweilers or pit bulls or anything. So like we were able to connect with the military base people and get the fostering accepted, but they couldn't keep a dog forever as their dog on base as a pit bull or a Rottweiler or a German Shepherd. So that's kind of our downfall of that program. But overall, we've saved a lot of lives. And who really likes puppies? Military wives. Loves them.
Hey, real quick made me think of it. There was a question about people that are different places to look. We've had a fire department foster because they're there 24 hours a day. So we've had a fire department foster for us. And we've also, we've reached out and gotten in touch with our local, we had a Cincinnati Red from the baseball team, has come out and fostered for us because he was in season. So they just fostered last summer for a dog for us. And we also put a dog as well into a recovery home. So people that were kind of rehabbing from drugs and alcohol, trying to get back on their feet, living in one of those group homes as well. So we've had some success with that. And it's kind of a fun way just to get out in the community as well.
Awesome. All right. Laura is asking, we have an extremely hard time finding foster homes for our big dogs that need to be the only pet in the home. How have you been able to reach people that do not have pets and get them in the foster network?
It's been tough. That's one of the hardest things, is finding somebody who has no pets. We capture them when we can. I mean, we get them engaged and tell them how great they are as soon as they, we make contact. But we post dogs that need to be in a home by themselves. So that's one way we recruit. But it's really difficult to do. It can be hard to find those people. So I don't have a lot of really good tips on that, but maybe my fellow panelists will.
I agree that that's probably the single most difficult thing for us as well, because, it's a community of animal lovers. So almost everyone has a pet, right? And so oftentimes people who the only pet in the home fosters are going to end up being kind of your experienced fosters that can very strictly rotate and crate and stuff like that, because that dog specifically needs to go out alone, right? And that's of course not ideal. Ideally we find an only pet foster, but that's been our biggest challenge. And as I mentioned, we're based out of 2 very large cities in the US, which makes it even more challenging, because in New York City, like every corner you walk on, right, there is a dog. Even if you live in an only pet home, there's dogs everywhere, right? And so that's a tough question that we haven't quite answered yet. But as of right now, in terms of, when it comes across, they usually end up in a foster pet home where it's going to be a lot of very strict rotation, so that dog can be out alone by itself on a supervised basis. So don't have a great answer to that, but it's a great discussion question.
Please don't judge me too harshly, but we got about 4 or 5 single home fosters. We posted our flyer at Pets at Peace. It's the funeral home for dogs in Savannah. So I knew the guy. He was a really sweet guy. And I was like, hey, not to be crass, but can I post my flyer here? And so people that are grieving often want to not be grieving. So we only have 2 places here that do doggy cremation, privately. So we've asked them, and what we did was we let them be a Wagaween sponsor. So we have a very big event at the end of every year where it's Wagaween. It's trick-or-treating for dogs. So what we did in exchange for that was we let them have a sponsorship and an InKind. And so they have the InKind sponsorship, and we get to post our flyers there, because I think some people might think it's crass, but it has actually recruited 4 or 5 people that wanted to volunteer, and quite a few fosters. But some people are not comfortable with that, because people lose their pets and they're sad.
Jennifer, that just sounds like a win-win to me. So
Totally. Yeah. One quick thought too is, when you get your foster applications or your forms in, make sure to check out, do they have other pets? And if they don't, prioritize them and do your one-on-one matching with them, make them VIPs, because sometimes you get them and you don't realize them at first. So we have just a minute for another question. How do you balance being flexible to work with the fosters and avoiding staff burnout? Staff are often super flexible to stay late, come early, drop off animals or supplies on the way to help accommodate fosters, but over time I've seen this can take a big toll.
Build up your staff volunteers. That's what we call them, where essentially they take a larger role than just like an event volunteer that holds a dog at an adoption event, right? These are your volunteers that are in your inbox helping you out. They can oftentimes help manage that, and oftentimes they will take the initiative if you just tell them the parameters of their volunteer role. It's so key. We have staff, but at the same time, they have to have their own lives. They need to, we can talk about compassion fatigue all day, but the volunteer staff, and particularly the younger ones, right? Your Gen Zers, your college students, this is they're dipping their toes into volunteering now, right? Get them excited and be like, you're in charge of leashes, crates, and whatever it is, right? Like, this is your thing, like make your own process with it. And you would be surprised, like how they just run with it, and they know tech better than all of us, right? And so they oftentimes, are able to create, really, really wonderful processes within their own, sub communities, and really help expand the staff's reach outside of business hours on weekends. And so that's been very, very, very key for sustainability for our staff.
Yeah, I agree. If you gotta have the more people, the better. If you're doing anything in your building, or if there's any situation in your building or group or rescue that only one person is handling, stop, find other people, share the workload. And we make sure that if our team is off the clock, that they should be submitting their hours. We don't make them go to the minute. But if they, we're on a call for a half hour, we're going to make sure we put that in as paid time. So just staying in touch with that, but trying to get as many people as possible. Burnout's a real thing.
Well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for being with us today and talking with us. Thank you so much.